Welcome to News9 Mediaverse, and you are watching On Point. And in this edition, I'm going to talk about India's Northeast. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, after declaration of Sikkim, would call it Asht Lakshmi. The Northeast of India resembles a masterpiece painted by nature with its diverse landscapes ranging from Grand Brahmaputra River to the unspoiled Kaziranga National Park and the towering Kanchenjunga Peak. Spanning 8 states, the Northeast boasts a remarkable variety of terrains, including snowy mountains in Arunachal Pradesh, lush plains in Assam, captivating plateaus in Meghalaya. It's a haven for nature enthusiasts and adventurers alike. Despite its breathtaking beauty, the region has been grappled with historical challenges, from the impact of the 1962 India-China War to the persistent reports of unrest and insurgency and lack of infrastructure development, the issues of connectivity, and multiple competing memories in this complex narrative, including Bodos, Mizos, and Nagas. However, around 2014, a significant shift began to unfold in the region's narrative. The Northeast moved from the sidelines to the forefront of mainstream under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So what exactly has changed? And how has the Prime Minister reshaped the trajectory of India's rising sun? How has the Northeast evolved during the 2 tenures under Prime Minister Narendra Modi? These questions are explored in the book Modi's Northeast Story, a compilation of essays edited by Tuhin, Sinha and Aditya Pittie, featuring contributions from key figures like Chief Ministers Himanta, Biswa, Sarma, Pema Khandu, Kiren, Rijju, Union Minister, and General V.K. Singh. So let me start with you, Tuhin. What made you edit this book, Modi's Northeast Story? What prompted you?
Well, as Prime Minister Modi completes 10 years in office, definitely the positive transformation of our northeastern states is one of the biggest achievements of Modi government. And I think we have completely done away with the alibi which Congress used to employ every now and then, called the tyranny of distance. So I think, today there is a seamless cohesion between Northeast and the rest of the country. A capex spend of more than 4 lakh crores in the last 10 years in development of infrastructure in the Northeast, wherein the total number of airports have gone up from 8 to 17, where the total stretch of national highways have gone up by nearly 50% or probably beyond that. And we have rail connectivity right up to Arunachal and parts of Manipur and large swathes of Nagaland. In fact, that explains the massive changes, because that has not merely bridged the infrastructural gaps, that has also done away with the cultural, that has also brought about a huge cultural unison, because I think 3 particular episodes from the past had left a scar upon the people of Northeast. One was in 1962, where Nehru virtually abdicated his responsibility by saying, "My heart goes out to the people of Assam." Nefa, a particular district in Arunachal, which was then NIFA, Northeastern Frontier Agency, when it was being taken over by Chinese, he very callously said, "My heart goes out to the people of Northeast," and that had left a scar upon the people for many years. Then obviously there was the bombing of Mizoram in 1965, the Nelai massacre of 1984. All of these had left a huge scar, which today stands completely done away with.
Aditya, story of Northeast, I suppose, cannot be limited to the infrastructure development. I think the story of Northeast is also the expansion of Bharatiya Janata Party, an area which was considered out of bound for BJP. Today, BJP rules Northeast. It has displaced the so-called Congress consensus in that area. That story also needs to be accounted for.
The idea, Kartikeya ji, in writing this book was to, document the all-pervasive transformation. So we were conscious not only to talk about a political narrative, but also, different facets of this development, which includes infrastructure, health, entrepreneurship, skill development, all these aspects, and some of the cultural integration that's happened, like Tuhin ji mentioned. So we wanted to cover all of this. I think the book really, instead of talking about kind of a, coming of age of BJP in that region, I think the development and transformation that has taken place has naturally ensured that the BJP has got a strong foothold in that region. Thanks to the book, I got a chance to travel to that region the first time myself. I am a business person, industrialist out of Pune, and it was quite eye-opening for me to travel first time to this region. When we spoke to a whole bunch of people, they are so enthused. They genuinely feel that, both physically and metaphorically, they are now connected to, the mainstream of India.
It's an honest book. You also mentioned Manipur. When I was flipping through it, that could have been conveniently dropped, but you mentioned Manipur as a challenge in this book.
No, I have not mentioned it as a challenge. See, honestly, if you talk about it, between 2017 March and April 2023, also saw one of the longest phases of peace and prosperity and progress in Manipur. But yes, there were certain dark shadows which we thought had been completely done away with, which unfortunately, sprang back. And obviously, there are vested interests. Like, if I briefly tell you the highway that India is planning right up to Thailand, which passes through Myanmar, that obviously has some geopolitical ramifications. The poppy trade, illegal poppy trade, which had been mushrooming during the Congress rule and which has been curbed largely under the present BJP government, all of that have had a, have played a role in the stretch of violence that you saw last year. But I think the worst is behind us, and that's why the chapter, the Manipur chapter, is written by a very enterprising businessman from there, Niranjan, who actually talks about the vast pro-business and pro-development initiatives of the government. So I think,
Actually,
let me put it this way.
Manipur is part of the Act East.
Absolutely.
The policy of the Prime Minister. Tamil border, I have been there. When I went through those pages, I felt myself being there because I had crossed that bridge to go to Myanmar. So when you were mentioning that, I knew what you were writing about.
So when you think big, there will be obstacles along the way. But like I mentioned, had it been a Congress government, I think there is one whole chapter on dispute resolution, written by Rami Desai. And that talks about how 90% of the disputes, whether they were ethnic disputes or whether they were, in fact, many of these states, including Assam and Arunachal, Assam and Meghalaya, had long-standing border disputes which for no reason were pending. All of these have been resolved by this government. So had it been a Congress government, I can tell you that even other parts of Northeast may have experienced disturbances because for them it was a business.
Aditya, another aspect of the book is that you have allowed the chief ministers, people in power, to catalogue the policy initiative. Generally, that cataloguing does not take place. How did you come upon this idea? Like, for example, the one written by Himanta Biswa Sarma, he catalogues it.
Absolutely. So, Kartikeya ji, when this book was conceived, when Tuhin ji and I met, and we thought, we should write something of significance of what Modi government has achieved that time when we met in the previous 9 years. So we realized that the Northeast development is one of the top 5, if not the top 3. However, we realized that nothing much has been written about it or documented properly. We also realized that most people just know the headline news. Even my knowledge was limited to that. Like, big development has happened in Northeast, but not more than that. So when we started thinking and planning further, we realized that, we can only tell so much, traveling there. And the best story would be told from the stakeholders, people who've steered this change. So we thought that is the best narrative that can come out, the real narrative, their perspectives, human anecdotes within that. So this is how we realized that best to make this an anthology of essays from the key stakeholders.
Were you also trying to attempt to catalogue stories of Northeast? Because stories have their own ecosystem. You create life. You tell your story, you seize the narrative. You set your own record straight. For example, you have chosen to give space to Lachit Boruphukan. People are not even taught this in history textbooks, that there was a place where Mughals lost the war.
Absolutely. See, I have written a book called on Bhagwan Birsa Munda in the recent past. So I am aware of the significance of invoking the legacy of some of these unsung warriors.
Yes.
So Lachit Borphukan, his impact on Assam and on the psyche of the people of Assam, especially, the entire region in the present day that has faced demographic distortion of a different kind from Bangladesh. And all of that had been encouraged and facilitated by the previous Congress government. So I think that was no less than the intrusion that Lachit Borphukan encountered 400 years ago or 350 years ago. So I think somewhere that is why Lachit Borphukan today is such a he draws such a massive connect with the people of Northeast, and hats off to Prime Minister Modi, because he has been invoking the right legacy in the right places and at the right time. And also Honorable CM of Assam, I think there is a massive statue of Lachit Borphukan coming up in the NCR region. I don't exactly know where, but the more you mainstream these heroes, I think that the dominance of a select few gets undermined, which is what the politics of Congress was all about.
Aditya, let's talk about Prime Minister's initiative. What are the key initiatives that have made overall differences in Northeast?
Sure. I think what struck me the most is the thrust on infrastructure, first and foremost. Because, unless there is connectivity, physical connectivity, you can't take the next steps forward. So the, sheer scale of developments of airport, railways, bridges, etc. is, awe-inspiring. One of the personal anecdotes is that when we went to Assam and, visited the Bhupen Hazarika Bridge, which is a 9.1 kilometer bridge across the Brahmaputra, it's, the scale is mind-boggling. It's really, truly awe-inspiring. And that is just from a, tourist visitor perspective. But when we spoke to people in that area, you realize how transformational it's been in their lives. Journeys that used to take a day plus, etc., have been cut down to half an hour or 1 hour. So it's been huge transformation. So I think that was one. The other is, basically also inspiring the region to come into the Indian mainstream, how you can create further development. I think the book really gives an insight into his transformation strategy and development model. And also again, from a business perspective, I viewed it as a greenfield project, because really development has not happened here. So this is a great kind of template that can be used in other regions as well.
When people talk about Prime Minister's developmental model, it gets mired in the narrative war of welfare, competing welfareism. But there is something even more elemental in that discourse, which is entrepreneurship. Can you take me through that? Because I think Northeast story under Prime Minister Modi is also a story of entrepreneurship.
Sure. Entrepreneurship, all the schemes, central schemes encouraging entrepreneurship, whether it's Startup India, skilling, etc., there's been a huge thrust in all of these states. It's not like, I think it's been multifaceted and many parallel stories of development. It's not like they've planned this sequentially, that infrastructure will come, then it will be followed by something. I feel the sense we got, and speaking to people, is a lot of these developmental activities are happening in parallel rather than sequentially. We in fact have an article by an entrepreneur, Tage Rita. She has a an organic winery that she set up. So there's lots of stories of entrepreneurship there, and our idea was, how can the book inspire people to set up businesses there? It's the mainstream, it's part of India, it's in fact an untapped market. Correct. I would say. So
and unconnected also right now. It requires better connection.
It requires better, but I think it's quite mainstream now. Top national level institutes have come there. We visited the IIM in Shillong, there's a AIIMS in Guwahati. So all of this is coming in, and I think there is like a increased vigor and energy in that area. So I see it more as an untapped market waiting to be developed.
But you wanted to come in?
So, in fact, the Vibrant Village program, that has been a huge game changer. You know, places which were most prone to incursions by Chinese, imagine imagine a village on the border, and you know, if you
that's Kiren's article you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and since you've traveled to Northeast extensively, you would know that Itanagar is just the start of Northeast. So, beyond Itanagar, there is a stretch of 500 kilometers if you travel to the...
I had the opportunity to see LAC from Kibutu.
Achha, wow, wonderful. So, imagine, and I'm sure the distance between Kibutu and Itanagar would be 500 kilometers or probably more. So, imagine, you know, the bordermost...
The irony is that from Itanagar, you don't get to travel to Kibutu. You travel to Kibutu through Assam, and then you get inside Arunachal Pradesh, and then you get into the Velong sector.
So imagine,
and it's an arduous
journey.
It's
and
not easy.
I'm sure some. I think a few airports have come up, and there are some local carriers which are now operating out of Guwahati and Itanagar to make the travel slightly easier. But imagine Kibutu being a hub of development and how that transforms a whole lot of villages on the way. So imagine if incursions are immediately reported by people in Kibutu because of the 5G connectivity, the seamless 5G connectivity, which is I think now present in almost all border areas, and how that transforms the very outlook of villagers who at one point of time did not have a sense of belongingness because of virtually being abandoned by the central government because of repeated Chinese incursions. So I think these small steps have made a big impact. Today, Tawang, which had borne the brunt of the 1962 war, also because that's the CM's constituency, is a hub of development. So I think these are big changes, and most importantly, when Prime Minister Modi ji talks about Viksit Bharat and sets certain targets, economic targets, we need to realize that now the thrust has to come from hitherto underdeveloped areas, and that is where the Northeast assumes a whole lot of significance. Even though its contribution to the GDP at this point of time may be 2.93%, I think that's going to grow exponentially in the time to come, and that will make a big difference.
When we talk about business, when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about growth, there is something very important, and I felt it like a reader, which is political stability. When you create political and social stability through your leadership, the businesses happen.
Absolutely.
Delivery happen.
Yes.
Undisturbed transfer of benefits happen.
Elimination of Congress from the Northeast is the first step towards that.
So I want to talk about the political stability which leadership of Modi has provided.
So, a few things struck me, Kartikeya ji. Prime Minister Modi since 2014 has visited the region 60 times, 60, which itself is startling when you compare it with previous prime ministers who've hardly been to never been. Leadership starts from the top. Just his visibility coming in, energizes and enthuses that area with, renewed vigor. So that also has been tremendous. And like you rightly said, businesses need two things. Normally, the Indian businessman is very enterprising and used to overcoming hurdles. But two things he can't do is build infrastructure and law and order. So, if you give him these two conditions, they are the necessary and sufficient conditions to build businesses. So, I think this has come now in the Northeast, and I am seeing it that the foundation has been built. We're in Noida, I see a lot of construction activity. Always the building takes time to come out of the basement.
Correct.
Once the foundation is built, then the superstructure gets built very quickly.
Tuhin, since you have written the book, you have accounted for a lot of things, health system in Meghalaya, those are micro stories. Anyone who would go into that would love to read those detailings into it. But there's also a larger picture. How do you think that Northeast is prepared to brace the challenge of fencing, which is being opposed by two state governments, NRC and CEA? These are political issues, but ultimately they create their own narratives and stabilities. So how well poised Northeast is?
Well, when there are bigger challenges, you need bigger and greater determination, greater resolve. And fortunately, I think this is a government and under Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah ji, we have that resolve to address these issues. the concerns of border states are legitimate, because obviously a lot of Naga families or a lot of even Kuki families have relatives across the border. But I'm sure, fencing would not mean preventing them altogether from visiting. It would just kind of filter the visits, or it would just scrutinize things better. But like I said,
but Biren Singh also has a point, when he says that displacement of the indigenous population. I understand what he feels, that Meiteis becoming minorities in Manipur. It's purely understandable. No majority would like to become a minority. And if you recall, the first election in Assam was won on the hard work of BJP, but that word, it stuck and it continues to be with me. Khilonjia Sarkar.
See, bottom line of all these problems
Correct?
is I understand that, but the bottom line, I think all of these problems stem out of the Congress's politics of otherization. When you don't see a particular region as needing special treatment, when you try to build up cohesiveness across the country, most of these problems eventually would find a solution of its own. Arunachal is the land of Rukmini, who was married to Bhagwan Krishna. Manipur is the land of Chitrangada, who was married to Arjuna. So where is the scope for this otherization which the Congress party thrives upon? So I think it's been a long wait for us to quell that otherization, but I think we are on our way. The Manipur episode has been unfortunate, but like I said, there is a legacy of ethnic disputes and conflicts, and I think it was just premature perhaps for the state government to have assumed that they were all behind us. They will be behind us once the fencing is done and
Aditya, before I close the interview, a lot of authors say that the Northeast also requires back-end integration, which means that there are markets in Northeast which are closer to Cox's Bazar, which are closer to the Chittagong port. They are closer to other exit points. Do you think that work is also required?
Yes and no. Obviously, that they're working on a lot of these things, but I feel there are a lot of industries or businesses that are natural to the Northeast that can come immediately. Tourism is one of them. In your starting monologue, you mentioned that Nagaland is considered the Switzerland of the East. So that we saw.
Sort of infrastructure which could have been there and should be there is not there.
But there's already been, I think, a record footfall of both
especially
domestic.
In context of Arunachal Pradesh. I can say that point blank.
We even went to Cherrapunji, we got to see, and it's just beautiful everywhere you go. So tourism is one thing. There have already been a record number of domestic and international tourist footfalls there already. There are many agro-based industries that can come there, bamboo, etc., palm oil. There's also, I think, stuff that doesn't require markets. So, the new age businesses, whether it's startups, software, etc., that can come there. Recently, Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji had an important conference he did in Assam, in Guwahati. Purposely, they are also trying to highlight all these regions, and traditionally, stuff that happened in Delhi and Bombay, a lot of conferences, etc., are now being moved to the Northeast.
I think in Northeast, if I have to sum up this conversation, I think it's not only about the Prime Minister visiting that area 60 times. I think making everyone of his government to be part of the Northeastern journey has been the biggest push of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Ministers being asked to go there not for a visit but to stay there. Bureaucrats being asked to go there not to attend meetings but to stay there. So it builds a deeper connection. And secondly, yes, there is no doubt about it, the sort of infrastructure projects that has been unleashed in the last 8 to 9 years is also part and parcel of the larger mantra of what governance should be about. Unleashing the power of the people, unleashing the entrepreneurship, unleashing the private enterprise with the public sector investment and initiative, so that a larger integration can take place. This book, Modi's Northeast Story, is primarily about Prime Minister's initiative and the sort of, I would say, give back that has come from Northeast. It's like a two-way process. You put a seed in the soil and the plant comes out. I think that's the way to describe it. So this is all in this edition of On Point. Thank you.